Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to fundamentally change how you view human history. We usually think of civilization's progress as a series of grand political empires, or maybe a timeline of brilliant inventions. But what if we look at it entirely through the lens of energetics? Drawing on the incredibly paradigm-shifting research of Vaclav Smil, we're going to trace exactly how humanity broke free from the limits of muscle and firewood, and how a massive shift in harnessing energy literally redefined what our species could achieve.
All right, let's dive right into this because this first concept completely flips our conventional understanding on its head. Basically, no terrestrial civilization can be anything else but a solar society. Everything we do absolutely depends on the sun's radiation energizing our habitable biosphere. It produces our food, our animal feed, our wood. So yeah, technically, your gas-guzzling car is actually solar-powered. When we talk about burning coal or oil, we aren't actually moving away from solar energy at all. We're just changing the vintage of the sunlight we're using.
To really wrap our heads around this, we need to understand the difference between immediate and delayed solar radiation. For almost all of human history, we relied on immediate transformations of solar energy. Think about it. Wind and water flows are driven by atmospheric gradients and evaporation caused by the sun. It takes a few days for animal dung to become usable fuel, a few months for crop residues, and, well, maybe a few decades to grow a tree for firewood. But the origins of fossil fuels, your peat, coal, oil, those are also just transformations of solar radiation. The huge difference here is the delay. Ancient plants, phytoplankton, zooplankton, they captured ancient sunlight, died, and were buried. Instead of a few decades, pressure and heat transformed this biomass over thousands or even hundreds of millions of years.
Now, what's really fascinating here is what happens when that ancient biomass is compressed over millions of years. All the water and useless impurities get squeezed right out, leaving behind this highly concentrated carbon matrix. Just look at the mathematical advantage this delay creates. While early young peats offer about 6 to 8 megajoules per kilogram, mature bituminous coals jump way up to between 20 and 29 megajoules. And crude oils? Arising from complex marine organisms, they pack nearly twice the energy of common coal, sitting at a staggering 42 to 44 megajoules per kilogram. We essentially tapped into a multi-million-year savings account of concentrated solar power.
Part 1. The Wood Crisis.
You see, a society doesn't just switch its entire energy foundation overnight because someone did a scientific calculation. It takes a real catalyst. And in 16th and 17th century England, they were literally running out of immediate solar energy. Specifically, they were running out of wood. You had the massive demands of domestic heating for a rapidly growing population, the totally voracious appetite of the iron production industry, and these enormous timber requirements for naval shipbuilding. It all led to severe regional wood shortages. The cost of fuel wood and charcoal absolutely skyrocketed. So this wasn't some optional upgrade, it was a full-blown economic emergency. To survive, England was forced to desperately start digging for outcropping coal.
We tend to picture the Industrial Revolution as this sudden, massive global wave that just happened everywhere all at once. But looking at the actual energy data completely shatters that myth. England crossed the 50% threshold, where coal provided more primary energy than wood exceptionally early, right around 1620. Because of this head start, Britain enjoyed a staggering 250-year run where coal completely dominated its energy landscape. Contrast that with the United States, which actually didn't hit that exact same tipping point until 1884. And China, the country that first used coal industrially in antiquity, well, due to decades of 20th century crises, civil wars, and economic issues, they didn't cross that 50% coal threshold until 1965.
Part 2. The Human Cost.
This energy transition absolutely changed the world, for sure. But there is this incredibly cruel paradox at the heart of energetics. The shift to an inanimate machine energy required an extreme, punishing amount of animate human exertion. Just listen to this quote from Robert Bald, a Scottish civil engineer who surveyed the mines back in 1812. He noted how common it was to see workers weeping bitterly from the sheer severity of the labor. That really grounds this abstract science in a brutal reality. The transition from wood to coal had to be literally dug out of the earth by human muscle. Long before we had powerful steam pumps or mechanized lifts, the heavy lifting of the early coal era fell almost entirely on the most vulnerable members of society.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what that looked like. In many Scottish pits, the absolute heaviest work was done by women and teenage girls, who were known as bearers. Let's just look at the raw mechanics of this labor for a second. They had to carry woven baskets of coal to the surface by climbing these incredibly steep, treacherous ladders. The baskets were actually fastened with straps directly to their foreheads to distribute the immense weight. Mothers would set out first, gripping a lighted candle literally in their teeth so their hands were free to climb, while their young daughters followed right behind them.
Bald calculated the daily physical execution of this work, and honestly, it is almost beyond modern comprehension. A single woman brought 4,080 pounds of coal to the pit top every single day. Some even carried up to 2 tons. Putting that into terms of energetics, carrying that much weight horizontally and vertically required an energy expenditure of about 12 megajoules. That averages out to a sustained 330 watts over a grueling 10-hour day. What that means is, these women and girls, many of whom started at age 7 and worked until they were 50, were operating, day after day, near the absolute biological maximum of human physical capacity. That right there is the hidden fuel of the early industrial age.
Part 3. From charcoal to coke. Okay, so once we actually had the coal out of the ground, our next big evolutionary leap was figuring out how to transform it. For centuries, iron smelting relied entirely on charcoal. But charcoal is incredibly fragile. It actually crumbles under heavy weight, which severely limited how tall you could build a blast furnace. Plus, you had to build your furnace right near a forest, which you would then quickly chop down. The massive breakthrough came when we applied destructive distillation, basically heating coal without oxygen, to create metallurgical coke. Coke is essentially a nearly pure carbon matrix. It has a massive energy density, but more importantly, it is incredibly strong in compression. It completely and totally severed the iron industry's dependence on disappearing forests.
So the absolutely crucial point here is that because this new coke could support much heavier charges of iron ore and limestone without just collapsing on itself, blast furnaces could suddenly scale up dramatically. They grew to nearly 25 meters tall with internal volumes of 300 cubic meters. Productivity just skyrocketed from less than 10 tons a day for the absolute best charcoal furnaces up to over 250 tons a day for coke furnaces. Global pig iron output literally exploded to 30 million tons by 1900. This singular material shift laid the literal iron and steel foundations of our modern cities, our bridges, and our railways.
Part 4. Rise of the Machines.
We had the fuel and we had the iron, but the steam engine was the real game changer. This was the invention that finally allowed us to convert all this buried chemical energy into reliable mechanical motion. It was the very first inanimate prime mover energized by fossil fuel. Think about it. Before this, if you wanted mechanical energy, you used a water wheel. But that meant you had to build your factory directly on a river, and if the river froze or dried up, you stopped working. You could use a windmill, sure, but that only worked when the wind blew. Or, as we saw, you used grueling muscle labor. The steam engine finally freed humanity from the rigid, inflexible constraints of immediate solar power.
But it definitely didn't happen overnight. The early engines, like the new common design we're looking at here, were just incredibly wasteful. They worked by injecting cold water directly into the main cylinder to condense the steam and create a vacuum. But that meant the cylinder had to be constantly reheated and recooled over and over, wasting a colossal amount of coal. It operated at a dismal efficiency of, at best, 0.7%. Honestly, it was so remarkably inefficient that it could really only be used directly at the coal mine where the fuel was essentially free anyway. But then, contrast that with James Watt's revolutionary redesign.
Watt basically engineered 3 mechanical superpowers to solve this massive waste. First, he enveloped the main cylinder in an insulating jacket to keep it just as hot as the entering steam at all times. Second, and this is the absolutely crucial part, he moved the condensation process to an entirely separate, constantly cold vessel. And third, he used pumps to extract any remaining air that might mess with the vacuum. This brilliant redesign drastically reduced fuel waste and just multiplied the raw power available to industry.
Let's move on and see how this builds, because these leaps in efficiency are what ultimately mobilized the modern world. Watt definitely ushered in industrial success, but the cumulative technical progress over the next century was just staggering. As engineers pushed operating pressures 100-fold higher, the efficiencies just leaped, from Newcomen's tiny 0.7% to the early 1800s at 2.5%, all the way up to a massive 25% efficiency in the late 1890s. This affordable, highly concentrated, and mobile power is exactly what put high-pressure steam engines on rails and in ships, driving international trade and accelerating urbanization to levels never seen before.
So what does this all mean for us today? As we look to the future, we have to remember the fundamental law of energetics that we saw with those Scottish coal bearers. Every single transition to a new form of energy supply has to be powered by the intensive deployment of existing energies. Just as the transition from wood to coal was built literally on the breaking backs of human muscle, we have to ask ourselves today what massive hidden energies are powering our transition to renewables. The modern solar panels and towering wind turbines we're building right now are themselves embodiments of the immense foundational power of fossil fuels. We needed to smelt the metals, synthesize the plastics, and manufacture all those complex components. As we attempt our next great energy transition, understanding the deep roots of how ancient sunlight forged our modern world isn't just history, it is the literal blueprint for our future. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the world around you, and I'll catch you next time.